Friends, good day. Henry David Thoreau, the Walden. Today I have in my hand the works of Henry David Thoreau, a famous naturalist. The name of his famous work is Walden. So today let us talk about this philosopher, about this social philosopher and a great naturalist, Henry David Thoreau. So the name of this work is Walden. I have in my hand the Walden. So let us talk about Walden. What is it about? Walden opens with a simple announcement that Thoreau spent 2 years in Walden Pond near Concord, Massachusetts, living a simple life supported by no one. He says that he now resides among the civilized again. The episode was clearly both experimental and temporary. The first chapter, Economy, is a manifesto of social thought and meditation on domestic management. And in it, Thoreau sketches out his ideas as he describes his pond project. He devotes attention to the skepticism and wonderment with which town people had greeted news of his project, and he defends himself from their views that society is the only place to live. He recounts the circumstances of his move to Walden Pond, along with a detailed account of his steps he took to construct his rustic habitation and the methods by which he supported himself in the course of his wilderness experiment. It is a chapter full of facts, figures, and practical advice, but also offer big ideas about the claims of individual versus social existence, all interspersed with the evidence of scholarship and propensity for humor. Thoreau tells us in this book that he completed his cabin in the spring of 1845 and moved on July 4 of that year. Most of the material and tools he used to build his home he borrowed or scrounged from previous site. The land he squats on belonging to his friend Ralph Waldo Emerson. He details and cost analysis of entire construction project. In order to make a little money, Thoreau cultivates a modest bean field, a job that tends to occupy his morning. He reserves his afternoon and evening for contemplation, reading and walking about the countryside, endorsing the values of austerity, simplicity, and solitude. Thoreau consistently emphasized the minimum of his lifestyle and the contentment to be derived from it. He repeatedly contrasts his own freedom with the imprisonment of others who devote their lives to material prosperity. Despite his isolation, Thoreau feels the presence of society surrounding him. The Fitchburg Railroad rushes past Walden Pond, interrupting his reveries and forcing him to contemplate the power of technology. Thoreau also finds occasion to converse with a wide range of the other people, such as the occasional peasant farmer, railroad worker, or the odd visitor to Walden. He described in some detail his association with the Canadian-born woodcutter Alex Therion, who is grand and sincere in his character, though modest in intellectual attainment. Thoreau makes frequent trips into Concord to seek the society of his long-time friend, aid to conduct that with the scattered business the season demand. On one such trip, Thoreau spends a night in jail For refusing to pay poll tax, he says the government supports slavery. Released the next day, Thoreau returns to Walden. Thoreau devotes the great attention to nature, the passing of the season and the creature with which he shares the wood. He recounts the habit of panoply of animals from woodchucks to partridge. Some he endows with a large meaning, often spiritual or psychological. The hooting lawn that plays hide and seek with Thoreau, for instance, become a symbol of playfulness of nature and its divine laughter at human endeavors. Another example of animal symbolism is a full-fledged ant war that Thoreau stumbles upon, prompting him to meditate on human warfare. Thoreau's interest in animals is not exactly like naturalist or zoologist. He does not observe and describes them neutrally and scientifically, but gives them a moral and philosophical significance, as if each has distinctive lesson to teach him. As autumn turns to winter, Thoreau begins preparation for the arrival of the cold. He listens to the squirrel, the rabbit and the fox as they scuttle about gathering food. He watches the migrating birds welcome the pests that infest his cabin as they escape the coming frost. He prepares his walls with plaster to shut on the wind. By day, he makes a study of the snow and ice, giving special attention to the mystic blue ice of Walden Pond. And by night, he sits and listens to the wind as it whips and whistles outside his door. Thoreau occasionally sees ice fishermen come to cut out huge blocks that are shipped off to cities, and contemplates how most of the ice will melt and flow back to Walden Pond. Occasionally, Thoreau receives a visit from friends like William Ellery Channing or Armus Bronson Alcott, but for the most part he is alone. In one chapter, he conjures a vision of earlier residents of Walden Pond, long dead and largely forgotten, including poor tradesmen and former slaves. Thoreau prefers to see himself in their company rather than amid and cultivated wealthy classes. As he becomes acquainted with Walden Pond and neighboring pond, Thoreau wants to map their layout and measure their depths. Thoreau finds that Walden Pond is no more than 100 feet deep, thereby refuting common folk wisdom that it is bottomless. He meditates on the pond as a symbol of infinity that people need in their lives. Eventually, winter gives way to spring, and with a huge crash and roar, the ice of Walden Pond begins to melt and hit the shore. In lyric image echoing the onset of Judgment Day, Thoreau described the coming of spring as a vast transformation of the face of the world, a time when all sins are forgiven. Thoreau announced that his project at the pond is over and that he returned to civilized life on September 6, 1847. The revitalization of landscape suggests the restoration of full powers of the human soul, and thorough narrative observation give way in the last chapter of Walden to a more direct sermonizing about the untapped potential within humanity. In visionary language, Thoreau exhorts us to meet our lives and live fully. So this is the, I have taken an outline of this book by Henry David Thoreau, his famous work, The Walden, and this is The Walden. It is a very famous book written by David Thoreau. And in this book, he had emphasized his entire philosophy, his naturalistic philosophy in this book. So I hope you will enjoy this book and don't miss it. I suggest that you must read this book. Thank you very much.